Okay, it's the show. You know, I
Are
know
we
a lot
live?
of people. We're live. We're doing it. I hit him with the switcheroo, folks. So Dakota might have to do his pre-production meeting. Dakota's back. Big fight weekend. Topic of the show, we're going to change it up on people. David Benavidez, Devin Haney, or Jesse Bam Rodriguez, which journey to stardom do you prefer as a fight fan, Dakota?
Yeah, so to be clear, I mean, all three of them have had tremendous careers, right? So this is all subjective and matter of opinion. But if I have to pick one out of those three, I got to go Bam Rodriguez, bro. And I think, you know, short of him being a much bigger man, there's nothing really standing in his way of stardom at the moment. He's just fought arguably the most challenging fight of his career on paper, a prime unbeaten champion coming off the best 2 wins of his career. And he was a whole nother level above. It was his Andre Ward, Chad Dawson. It was his Crawford Spence to a smaller extent. And he was incredible. And as much as I think that David Benavidez has had an incredible career, as is Haney, at the moment, Bam is getting the big fights that are available to him, right? The big fights that exists, he's making. He's already beaten legends from the era before him, and now he's beating his contemporaries in Martinez, in Sonny Edwards, and it's a pretty special run he's on right now, man.
Shout out our guy, Julius Alabama. I haven't seen you in the chat before. Thank you for jumping on. He said Bam should fight one of the Japanese 118 champions. I think that right now there's Christian Medina who has a belt, and I think Tenshin and Takuma Inoue are fighting for a title possibly tonight.
I could also be wrong. Is Seiya Tsutsumi a titleist at the moment?
Is he at bantamweight?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, man. Is it my boxing knowledge off the top of my head of the bantamweight division, because I felt as though Nakatani really cleaned up that division amongst the top guys, and his move. Bam versus Tenshin is huge. I agree. That is a big fight. That's an exciting fight. Man, K crazy. Yo, what's up, guys? Let's kind of, because we have a hardcore fan base, let's stay with Bam. I think we both were sending crazy text messages, not very exciting. Not if they got subpoenaed, I don't think anyone would be thrilled at the provocative nature, but I think there was a lot of, dude, Bam is making this look too easy. Like, that was kind of our, like, if this guy was like a 160-pound fighter, I think a lot of people would be like, this guy's the best guy in the world. But I think because he fights at 115, there's not a familiarity. Like you said, Puma Martinez is coming off of 2 wins in Japan over Kazuto Ioka. And before that, he beat a long-standing title holder, Jerwin Nkanajas, twice. And if you had told me this was a tune-up fight, you could have convinced me this was a tune-up fight. He made a world champion who's the second best guy in the division look like a tune-up fight. There's no other word for me other than sensational to describe what Bam did.
Yeah, that's what the best of their time do, is whoever's the biggest challenge out there, they make it look easy. And Crawford has done it before, Usyk has done it before, and Bam Rodriguez has done it before. I would say on a couple of different occasions. There's been times where, there's an argument that, oh, this is his biggest challenge, this is his toughest fight to date. And more often than not, he's exceeding expectations in every performance. I mean, the footwork on this one alone, the swimming without getting wet, he's just right in the pocket, not getting hit. It was a thing of beauty, bro. It really was.
Even the knockout, I mean, he's being so evasive. He's turning the corner on this guy. And he really made him reach, and then he taught him. He caught him, and it like, when you watch it in slow motion, it's almost a comical knockout because of the high level of skill he put it. And I saw some people criticizing, oh, he's not getting up. I mean, that was a one-sided beatdown. That it wasn't just the shot that made him not. It was the nature of this, that I keep getting hit clean, and I can't come up with anything that's effective.
And he had like you said, it was a completely one-sided fight up to that point. I think that he was physically broken down by that point. And the other thing about Bam, And you saw it early in the fight, particularly, you know, when Martinez in that first round, he was throwing hard, bro. He's throwing hard. He was putting a lot of effort in and not getting a whole lot out of it. And bam, even in the knockout, that little pull counter was like he was doing it on the mitts. He wasn't winding up. He wasn't working for it. It was just natural. It was smooth. It was programmed into his body. And it's just so effortless watching him do what he does, you know, where these guys are coming out and they're working so hard for so little payoff, you know?
And let's really break this down. So for the journey of all three, we're going to focus on these three, but we're really going to do the four major fights. Bam, you know, he's an undercard guy. 2021, I actually see him on a Fresno undercard. People are talking him up. Really good fighter, pound for pound level fighter is the whispers, but he doesn't have a promoter. He moves up from 108 to 115 pounds. I believe he fights Quadros. Was it Quadros or Rungvisai?
I thought he fought Rungvisai first.
Let me see. Because I get it wrong, but he moved up 2 weight classes, basically puts on a scintillating and sensational performance. And then in a short period of time, yeah, it was Quadros was the first one. He beats him, then he stops Rungvisai, and then, you know, he's off to the races. He beats Sonny Edwards, he beats Estrada. I mean, he's really beating all the great fighters. It's goofy to say, but it feels like a formality for him to be an undisputed champion. Like I don't think there's anyone that's going in and, should I say the other champion's name for the sake of fairness?
Absolutely. It's
Okay,
it's also the only potential stone left unturned for him at 115 right now.
So I'm doing research, which, as many of you who listen to the show knows, is very difficult.
But I'm going to be real though, bro. It honestly doesn't matter who it is. I think that it would be interesting and an accomplishment to see him become undisputed at 115. But ultimately, I think he'll be the heavy favorite in that fight. And I think the fights that are going to challenge him and that people will want to see most are at higher weights. And that's not necessarily fair or, you know, the right size or the right weight for him, but he's just that good. There's nobody that's actually his size that is going to be able to hang.
Well, and this will transition into my fighter, who their journey to stardom is very good, is the truly elite fighters are so good. It's almost like Brad Pitt in what was the Quentin Tarantino movie, the Sharon Stone, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You know how like Brad Pitt it plays this badass character, and he had to be like on mushrooms or a substance, because there's no way, if it's a fair fight, this character, you know, like if all things are equal, you can't believe that he wouldn't put up a fair fight. So he has to be a little inebriated for it to be a fair fight. Bam is so good. I think that he has to give up size for people to be interested, because we now think
a lot of guys have had this problem that are this good at the lower weights. Lomachenko had this problem in a way. Not so much as a year and a half ago, people were not jokingly talking about him and Tank Davis because they couldn't imagine anyone below 135 pounds that could even give him a problem. So this does happen to smaller fighters who clean out their weight class and are levels above.
Well, there is a really interesting fight on the horizon for him. Wilbaldo Garcia Perez is the current belt holder. He holds the IBF title. He beat Rene Calixto Babino via split decision. Their first fight was a draw. Dakota actually has it down as one of his favorite fights of 2024, actually. Big fan of that fight. He's taken on your guy, Kenshiro Taraji. So if Taraji were to win, which I don't think is an assumed thing given Taraji's preference to get hit a lot, and that doesn't age very well. But Taraji versus Jesse Bam Rodriguez, I think stylistically is a fun, exciting matchup for, if nothing else, that Kenshiro will come forward and be a willing target to try to make an action fight.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that fight is about as one-sided as it gets. And I think most people that have seen both guys will likely feel that way, you know, with respect to the hardcore Japanese fans who are going to be pulling for their guy. I don't think that that's a particularly compelling fight. I think Sasumi is even a more compelling fight because he's, you know, unbeaten, closer to his prime. I think there's other guys at 118, even though I think it would be a big fight. It's hard for me. I mean, I think he would have a hard time with Martinez, even just on a stylistic level. So it's hard for me to imagine him being able to do much with Bam.
So Junto just beat Sasumi. So Sasumi lost his belt because Junto beat him, and now Junto moved up. Which also, when you get these guys that go, why is Junto Nakatani so high on your pound for pound list? Because he beats the other credible guys, and he's done it in multiple divisions, and he's fighting other belt holders. That's why he's on my pound for pound list, FYI.
Yeah, as he should be. I mean, he's certainly one of the most interesting fighters out. I'm talking about Seo Sasumi, who beat Takuma in a way.
Junto just beat him in October.
Are you sure about that? I'm not seeing that on his box rec. It says he's unbeaten. Maybe he beat a different Satsumi. Let me see. Nah, he beat Nishida.
No, I totally did that old man thing where I looked at the wrong thing. So that I did fake news. He's fighting Nonito Donaire December 17th.
Right. I think the winner of that fight, I mean, I hate to see Donaire back at it, but if he were able to beat this young unbeaten guy, Bam versus Donaire just on the size difference, I think would be compelling.
So we've covered Bam. Now let's get to mine, which is, for me, the journey I've really enjoyed is David Benavidez. And I'll tell you why. He emerged as like a young prospect. And also, I want to get to my guy, Julius Alabama, in the chat. Bellum Smith versus Benavidez is a great fight. I agree. Also, he said Junto would knock out Bam. Maybe. I mean, that's one of those two schoolyard bullies fighting. And we just want to see a fight like that. And then our guy, Heavy D, I believe, is in the chat. David, how you doing? All three of them will shine. Something to that nature. All three of them will shine. So I like Benavidez. And what I like about Benavidez really is that Big Dave he started out as like a word of mouth guy, up and comer. Look at this young fighter. And there were mythical sparring sessions of him. Oh my God, did you hear about what he did with and then enter a really good fighter? I think the one that went around, and maybe there's video of it, was Kelly Pavlik. People had heard about him sparring Kelly Pavlik. And then he loses a belt, and he had some weight issues. And I think people kind of wrote him off as like a troubled fighter at a certain point when Canelo was having a run. And when would you say he really started becoming like this modern legend? I'd say, was it before
Probably the Durrell fight? Probably the Durrell fight, I would say.
The Durrell fight?
I think right around then. At least that was for me. He was already a contender by that point, but when he dealt with a guy, you know, people might forget Durrell was like, you know, like a top 7 guy at the weight. And when he was able to deal with that fight so easily, it was like, all right, now I'm wondering if anybody can give him a problem. And so far, no one really has, other than maybe David Morrell.
So I'd say that, like, he really, for me, the journey I've really appreciated is, you know, he stops David Lemieux in one round. We really like David Lemieux. He beat Kyrone Davis. I believe Davis took it on short notice. I forget who he was supposed to fight originally. Was it Jose Uzcategui maybe? And I mean, those are solid wins, but you kind of expect a fighter of David Benavidez's stature to win. But if you look at his last 5 fights, these are amazing. Caleb Plant, which was a brutal and violent fight. You know, that was a scary, scary fight. Followed by Demetrius Andrade, who I think kind of fits the boogeyman mold that a lot of times we talk about, where he had to move up in weight and he had to get older to get fights that he could get. And he had to also meet an undesirable opponent because no one wanted to fight him. Then Benavidez fights probably one of the biggest boogeymen in the division no one talks about, Alexander Gvozdyk, the Nail, wins that fight. David Morrell is how he starts this year off. And then Anthony Yarde. I'd say Anthony Yarde is probably his most reasonable fight in recent memory. To me, in this fight, what I saw, to give my analysis on this fight, is David Benavidez saw, like, to me, Yarde came out with a temperament that I don't think you could beat David Benavidez with. I don't think you can try to box and move David Benavidez. I think at a certain point he lands punches, he goes downhill, he's an avalanche, and he's just too much. There's just you're gonna have to sit in there and trade with him. You can't just play the I'm gonna be on the outside or he's not gonna get on the inside on me. What do you like? Do you agree with me on that?
I think to some extent, I agree with it allows him to get downhill, and Caleb Plant, being a more effective outside boxer, didn't have long-term success with it. But I don't know that was his problem in this fight. I think what his problem was he got too comfortable early being on the ropes. And early on, when he's still fresh, he was rolling and catching and slipping some shit. And he was actually being kind of slippery, but he was giving David long periods of a stationary target to just kind of get warmed up and start letting his hands go. And he was throwing good counters, but he wasn't throwing enough counters to deter him from coming in. So I actually felt like if he was going to take that approach, at times he was being somewhat effective, but he was having long periods where he was not moving at all. And it was really letting David just kind of get a rhythm and get a head of steam going. And, once he lands one, he's off and running, so by that 4th, 5th round, it was already getting like brutal.
So the fight I saw was by the 2nd round, David was fine just throwing punches and he was getting into rhythm.
But he had a stationary target to do it with.
And Yarde, to me, is starting to look like he's declining a little bit. I think he's someone that British fans have really been endeared with because he gets in with guys like Kovalev and Beterbiev, and he has moments. He's a guy that I think people always feel like he's one punch away from landing a bomb that changes a fight. But in those fights, I remember he never really bangs with you. He kind of meets, but he moves around and then he'll look for a big shot and he kind of moves. And he has an awkward style that's based around a lot of his power. And in this fight, I saw him doing a lot of that stuff, but I also felt like he went to the ropes based on age, based on, okay, I'm a veteran. I think this is going to work. And he let Benavidez get going too quick. And this
I almost felt like he was like, let me let this guy get his wiggles out a little bit, and I'm going to get rolling in a couple of rounds. But the problem is when you do that against Benavidez, there's a volume coming at you where he's, that was that one sequence. He threw about 38 left hooks in a row in a clinch, with his other arm locked up. So there's just, it only works, but for so long,
But, and I've heard people naively say, well, David's not technical and this and that. Well, okay, he has some flaws, but when he's throwing 30 punches, each of which could knock you out, I want to meet the guy that's really willing to stand with him and exchange in those instances. Like, we have techniques that work, but what Benavidez does is highly effective. And you have to be willing to take shots to do it. And I think, let's get to the comments. Julius, Alabama, Apataya versus Benavidez is a bloodbath. I love that fight. We're going to get to that in a second. Benavidez is close to a Hall of Famer. He's the youngest 168er ever in terms of champion. Yarde was terrified. I'm not sure if he was terrified. I think he was just an older fighter who didn't really have a path to victory. Like, I think everything
just couldn't match the intensity. I don't even know. Like, listen, I like Anthony Yarde, and if him and Callum Smith want to get a fight in before they retire to see who the best Brit is, I would love to see that. I think that he's been a solid contender for a long time, but at his best, he wasn't going to match Benavidez's intensity.
He's a good ambassador as a contender at the top level of the sport. He never turns down fights.
He's never going to fucking lay an egg and not show up. Like, he's going to show up and give it a go. He's going to be prepared. He's going to be in shape. He's not like an asshole.
Weight. He's a true professional going through it. If you don't train hard, he will beat you up. He's everything we like about the sport, but the problem is he ran into a generational guy, and I think Benavidez took
multiple.
Yeah, but with this guy, I think he ran into, after taking some hard fights, he ran into a guy who is frustrated with his situation in the sport. I think Benavidez really wants a generational fight. Now he's moving up to cruiserweight, but he feels as though he wanted the Canelo fight. It just didn't happen. He wants a Bivol fight. It's not happening. He wants a Beterbiev fight. It's not happening. And he's sick of waiting. So I think that you're dealing with someone who has a lot of frustration around, I can't get my big fight, so I'm going to take it out on somebody. And after the fight, the balls to go to cruiserweight. You know, he's not even going to just sit at light heavyweight and be one of the guys. He's like, I'm fighting Zordo in May. That's my next fight.
And I love that fight, you know. And listen, I don't think Beterbiev or Bivol are ducking him. They have unfinished business of their own that I think is worthy of finishing. They're the two best light heavyweights of their generation. And I look forward to seeing that. But there's no reason for David to wait for that fight to get signed. Wait to see how that fight goes. Wouldn't blow your mind if it was a draw, right? And they got to do a number 4. So I'm just saying, wait for the fight to get made, wait for it to happen, wait to see how it goes, and then hope the winner is willing to take him next. That's a lot of ifs, and I respect him not relying on that many ifs.
And imagine next year if Benavidez goes, Zordo, say he wins that, and then say he fights Jay Apataya. I mean, these are the type of fights Benavidez is doing. And that's why I'm saying I like his journey to stardom, because it's like we're getting hitters every time. Even his tune-up, quote unquote, tune-up fights are guys a lot of people are avoiding.
I think my only concern about this fight, and I think it's a great fight, and I think that he'll probably win it. And I think Zordo is a hell of a champion. I just think David Benavidez is one of the best of his time. But the only thing I don't like about this fight is it feels like if he does this now, it takes any fight at light heavyweight in the future off the table. And I guess I would have preferred, just as a fan, to see him move up in weight after the Beterbiev and the Bivol fight, whoever that would have been. I'm not saying that's realistic. I'm not saying that he's doing the wrong thing. I'm just there's guys at 168 that are talented that are probably going to move up in the not too distant future that I'd love to see him in with. If it's, you know, Diego or Osleis Iglesias, you know, there's guys between 168 and 175 that I would still love to see him match with. And I feel like that's no longer an option after the Zordo fight. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he can do it. Maybe he's that guy, but we don't have that many examples of that.
Benavidez is a Terminator, says Calvin Mob 681. David is a beast and a monster put together. He's showing it. Give him respect. I think David is on the right track to get his career around. This Yarde fight really put him into a more popular level. No more co-main or undercards from now on. Props to him. Bam Rodriguez and David Benavidez are daring to be great, says Calvin Mob. I agree. I would love 175 unification with either Artur Beterbiev or Dimitri Bivol. And I'm not mad about the Zordo fight. Yeah, not sure he comes down from cruiser back to 175, not with his weight.
That's my concern. You know, he's already a naturally big guy. He's probably, what, 6'3", right? So
bigger than you think, too. Like, he's you know he's big, but when you see him in person, he feels like 6'5", even if he's 6'3", if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And he's imposing in the ring as well. I don't know if he can be a heavyweight. I don't know if that's an option. So it feels like if you go up to cruiserweight, now you've cut off this whole other era of fights that could potentially be very interesting in a different way. Up at cruiserweight, there's only really 2 fights that I'd be interested in seeing him in.
Well, and let's be honest, cruiserweight's typically a pretty bad division. Like, it's not, there's certain times we're excited.
He can make it good, though, right? He can make it a little better because he's going to be, you know, he's already the guy coming up from 168 and 175. One of our commenters today said, you know, I'd love to see him and Billum Smith. That fight becomes more appealing because he's the naturally smaller guy. So I think that he can make the division and make the matchups more interesting.
And Dude is huge, said Lobster 11. Noakes and Norman lost to generational greats. I believe both Noakes and Norman can still be champs. And Calvin Mob says everyone says he looks huge, way bigger in person. He's massive, man. He's massive. And I think what's so scary about David when you're around him is how polite he is and how ferocious he is in the ring. There's a level of intensity that his humbleness exudes. And I think that, like, with a lot of these guys that play a character, so to speak, you feel a real toughness with David Benavidez with the way he conducts himself. It's very intimidating, I would say. When you see him fight week, he's there. Lobster 11 said he's got a run in the chat. Well, be sure to come back when the show is over or check it on the replay, because now we are going in on Devin Haney's big win, and Devin Haney beat Brian Norman. What are your thoughts on this, Dakota?
I mean, this was the kind of win that we talked about before the fight. We both favored Brian Norman in this fight. And we both said it last week. If Haney were to win this fight and to win it, you know, in spectacular fashion, that it would kind of do a 180 on the current direction of his career after the Ryan Garcia fight, which beyond the fight itself, the buildup and the post, you know, the aftermath of the fight was such a fiasco. Much of that attributed to Ryan, but it had impacts on Devin that clearly carried over to his fight with Jose Ramirez. It wasn't his best out. Again, Jose's a hell of a fighter, and that's a tough guy to take your first time out after that kind of a event. But it just wasn't clear. What's the direction? Then Ryan loses to Rolly. You know, was Ryan, you know, where's Ryan really at in terms of level? There's a lot of things up in the air with Devin. He moves up in weight. He's fighting the best welterweight in the world, who has really blown us away the last year and change.
Ton of momentum. I think you can't underestimate or undersell how much momentum and confidence Norman had coming into this fight, which makes the win so impressive. Right. Carry on, Dakota.
But these are the kinds of performances, the fact that he was able to recreate, in a sense, his performance against Regis. It might not have been that good of a performance, but it was that type of a performance that he needed to win this one. He was able to exploit some of the shortcomings that we've seen in Norman earlier in his career that other fighters have not been able to take advantage of, particularly since Quentin. We saw him maintain his range, use a power jab, and he was spectacular. And I just think that those are the moments where fighters really become great, is when your back's against the wall and you blow everybody away. You know, we talk about this with Manny all the time. Why is Manny so great? Well, part of why Manny's so great is when he would lose, then he would blow your mind the next fight. So there was never a death sentence. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that Devin proved that he was great with this victory, and it's not just hyperbole, because a lot of people, including experts, thought he'd lose, and they were very rational in thinking that he'd lose based on the performances he had and things and the way Norman was looking. To me, this fight reminded me of Joe Calzaghe, Jeff Lacey. It felt like a career derailing type fight where you had someone like Jeff Lacey coming in that people expected to have this magnificent performance, and everything went wrong. I think people underestimate Bill Haney, and I think that he has some real gamesmanship fight week, and I think he really got Norman's dad.
What do you think it is that they underestimate about him? Do you think they underestimate his knowledge as a boxing guy?
No, I'll get to it. So I think with Bill, you're never going to win a talk fight with Bill Haney.
But they're all going to try.
But if you even engage in it, I think that he's such a chess player. He got Norman Sr. going to the press conference trying to talk with Bill. And if you notice, his attention isn't on his son as much. And as the fight got more and more, you know, you're seeing Senior doing interviews leading up and all of this. And I feel like part of that is also Bill planting the seed. Like, oh, yeah, they can't do it. And then if you notice, the Haneys start to be exclusive. They're not doing as many blogs. All of a sudden, they're more focused. And as it gets closer to the fight, day of the fight, live podcast, nothing from Haney. It seemed like Bill was able, through gamesmanship, to take the father's focus away at times leading into the fight. And it felt as though in the fight, the game plan was when you hit him, the fight's going to change. And when the punch didn't land, it was kind of like scratching, what do we do now? And I think that some of that attributes to the energy you put into something that really didn't matter for winning the fight.
Well, and he got clipped early. He got dropped in that second round. I definitely didn't see that coming. I thought that if anybody's chin or was risking getting put down in the fight, it was Devin. And he flipped the script on that so early, and I think it tamed Norman for a bunch of rounds, and then it was like maybe it was like 8 through 10, something like that, maybe 9 through 11. He started to close range a bit, and he made it a little physical. He probably won 2 or 3 rounds in there, but he didn't do it because he was landing clean shots, right? He was just kind of making it ugly, banging the body, pushing Devin around a little bit, and his work rate came down a little bit for sure to kind of, you know, you could see he was kind of saving for the 11 and 12. But yeah, I was so impressed with Devin, man. There were so many things kind of going against him going into this. And I've been so impressed with Norman recently. So I think that's part of what was so exciting about this. I love being wrong in boxing, Lukey, because when you get caught off guard, that's the most fun.
That's kind of how I feel. You know, you get these guys that are like, I'm always right. And it's like, why would you watch something where you know the outcome? It's actually more fun when you don't know what's going to happen. Like when you spit a soda out because the guy, like the moment seeing a Haney drop a power puncher like Norman and go up to his face and have an iconic image that was eerily reminiscent of what Ryan did to him. It was almost like a full circle moment. And in my live podcast I did after the main event, I kind of shared an anecdote that it felt like Haney went from the young Devin Haney of his career to this is now the man Devin Haney. Like this is the adult version. And I don't understand the critic. I think that Haney is like an old school Southern pro wrestler, and people can't separate his ability to make you mad with what he's capable of doing in the ring. He plays a character or he generates emotions to the point where people can't rationally look at the skill set with him. And I think that people want to see him be humbled based on, like, you know, this kind of whatever it is about him. It seems like he rubs people at times the wrong way. Maybe there's a little bit of people. He reminds people of Floyd to a certain extent, and it angers people, etc. Whatever it could be. And I think that when he's in his rhythm, and especially when his feet are faster than his opponents and his hands are faster, and when he gets confident, he is really good at controlling tempo in fights.
Now with this punching power, he's going to be even better at controlling pace. You know, I'm sure people that watch our show are getting sick of hearing me talk about it. But when a guy has been killing himself to make weight for as long as Devin killed himself to make 135 and then to make 140, I don't think it was that much fucking better. He was stronger and more explosive in this fight. We saw it with Michaela Mayer. We've seen it with Boots. We've seen it with Tiger Johnson a couple of weeks ago. Virgil Ortiz, since he left welterweight. The weight cut thing, I think it's the goal is not to get as low as you can. It's to get as low as you can while you're effective. And I think these particularly young fighters, they continually push themselves past that breaking point when they're cutting weight. I can't imagine it's adding to their explosiveness, to their ability to take a shot, you know, to your reaction time, your reflexes, all of those things, you know. So again, I'm sorry if you watch the show, you know, frequently and you're getting sick of hearing me talk about it, but there's just too many examples, and there's too many examples lately. It's just too obvious that when guys are fighting closer to a more natural body weight for them, that they're better. It's kind of a no-brainer. Don't know where Lukey went. He kind of left us hanging here, guys, but I'm going to read some of these comments. Norman Jr. needs to avoid Tiger Johnson and go for flat-footed Mexicans. You know, I don't know that Brian Norman needs to avoid anybody. I think he needs to get better. You know, he's only a 24-year-old guy, already so ahead of the curve for a guy his age, you know, to be 24 years old and be a former world champion. You know, most 24-year-old fighters have nothing but upside. So, you know, I think that Brian can get better. I think that he can learn from this. I think a 28-year-old Brian Norman benefits from the experiences of a 24-year-old Brian Norman. Julius Alabama also says Brian Sr. gave his son horrible instructions during the fight. Yeah, I couldn't really make out what he was saying. He was doing a lot of whispering and like getting close to his ear. Lukey knows how I feel about this. It's also been, to some extent at times an issue with Bill Haney, but I just think when you got dads in the corner, you've got to have, in general, I'm not a huge fan of dads in the corner. There's guys that are great at it, but in general, I just think it's better to at least have another person there that's not your blood, that can be impartial in a certain kind of way.
Yeah, it always feels like it's a little too high stakes for a dad to be like too reasonable, like, oh man, like it just feels like when you have a child, you have a deep love and an unconditional love for a child, and you're never going to probably see things completely objective. You're either going to probably want to pull the plug too soon or have irrational confidence, neither of which seem good. I always go back to like boxing's like war, and you don't hear of a lot of dads leading their son to war. So like it's just a weird, but then if you think about it, to create a great fighter, you need to kind of almost have someone that monitors the diet and takes you running, and it's a double-edged sword. Sure. So to me, I don't understand the criticism about Devin Haney's performance because, his back was against the wall. A lot of experts picked him to lose. And this was by any.
Well, can you explain what the criticism is? Because as you know, I'm not an internet man. I'm not a money man. I'm not a gambling man. I'm a boxing man. So what is the criticism of a guy who wins 9 out of 12 rounds in a new weight class against the top guy at the weight?
Well, immediately the criticism I saw was a lot of people saying he was boring, and this was a boring performance. And in the second half of the fight, it wasn't entertaining. To me, this was a career-defining performance, a career resurrection. And this was a win by any means necessary performance. This was if you lose, people start to question, is this like Fernando Vargas when he lost to Tito Trinidad? And
is it AB?
You start to go down that thing. And I think for him to deal with a lot of that mental pressure and to put forth this type of performance and to drop Norman early in the fight, yeah, I think it was good. Julius Alabama, Norman.
I already read these while you're gone. My bad.
Did you do the Haney plays a character comment?
No, I did Julius's.
Okay. Haney plays a character for his fan base. I could see that. I mean, I think that it's a double-edged sword, right? It's fun to play these characters that are antagonizing to people, but you also can't get sympathy, right?
He's not particularly antagonizing though. He's always very, anything I watch of him, he's always like soft spoken. It was so funny to me in the Ryan Garcia buildup. It'd be like, oh, these two crazy guys. And then you got one guy singing and dancing. He's on the phone with Andrew Tate talking about he got kidnapped by aliens. Like the kid's out of his fucking mind. And everyone's like, oh, look at both of these crazy guys. I'm like, what do you mean the quiet one and the one that can't shut his fucking mouth?
Great observation. It's like, Devin just kind of shows up in crazy designer fashion and is very quiet, and his dad says stuff. And then like people are like, whoa, they're out of control.
The idea that Devin Haney is controversial to me is really odd. If anything, I think you could say that he's like a bland person, because what do we know about him as a guy? That's an odd thing that somebody would like look good and wear some clothes.
Well, I think that what's interesting about him is like, the substance to him is that he trains really hard and he's in shape and he's a great boxer, but it doesn't seem to be beyond that there's much beyond that.
He says, oh, I want to thank my team. I want to thank Allah. I want to fucking, he's like a nice kid. I don't understand that perception.
This is a great take that like people like, what is, I guess that it's like the loss that he celebrated, putting his record back to 0 and stuff and that, but I don't know. He just rubs people the wrong way. But we need to start do we need to hire a private investigator to figure this one out? Because you're making good points. Let's go to Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes. Let's finish out this card.
Well, listen, it was again, I don't know what the internet is saying. I don't know what all of these people are saying that would be critical of that fight. I'm sure there's plenty of it, but Abdullah Mason's a 21-year-old kid who had never been past 6 rounds, and he got in with a legitimate top 15 guy in his weight. Obviously, an actual top guy at the sanctioning body, I believe was the WBO. And there was nothing perfect about it. I think there were times where he fought too emotional. I think there was times where the fight was more physical than he needed it to be as effective as possible. But he kept his composure in the line of fire. He never got too out ahead of himself. And his best rounds of the fight were in the back half of the fight. So when I see a kid who's never been past 6 rounds, and then I felt like the 7th round, maybe even the 8th round, he like flipped the switch. That's what I want to see, bro. And the times he got hit too clean and some of the things that he gave Noakes, you can work on all those things. But a guy like Noakes who hits that hard, who has experience, that's the kind of guy who can get your young guy to melt down. And the kid didn't. He kept it together. He won the fight going away, won it clean. And to me, rounds like 8 through 11 or 8 through 10 were his best rounds of the fight.
What I was most impressed was like both guys are going to obviously come into this fight with a lot of emotion. And I think the big thing with Abdullah Mason is his performances got him to this point. It's not like he was quote unquote built to this point. It's like he was a standout on undercards, having sensational knockouts that elevated him to the position of being in a vacant title for the WBO lightweight title. He's 21 years old. And like for him to win a fight of this magnitude against a true contender at this age is extremely special. And not many guys fight composed championship fights at the age of 21. So if anyone were to complain or criticize the emotion, I also think they don't understand what it's like being 21, where you think you're invincible. You think you have a lot of time left on earth. And
who cares if I get hit, right? You know, I'm going to be doing this forever.
And there's also a little bit of, this is going to be one of those moments I've saved myself for. This is when I win the belt. This is where I'm going to put on a little bit of a show. And I think this is one of those fights where you grow from it. In hindsight, we could also say, okay, maybe this is cautionary, you know, because like if he keeps getting hit for 2 to 3 years like this, it's not sustainability. My guy, Stevie, my good friend, Abdullah, a great fighter, just needs to really work on his defense because on an elite fighter's punch, it would be bad. He can't keep getting hit like that. I think that's a very valid point that he has to work on his defense. I also think the emotion of the moment was running high on him. And you can tell by the way his face is that at times when an exchange happens, he wants to get his back. I call it a temperament thing with Abdullah. And I think that part of his growth to becoming a possible Hall of Fame boxer is to channel that into emotions, into moments in the fight where he can implement it. You know, he can fight on that because he's really a versatile fighter. We saw in that second half, he can fight off his jab, control the fight at distance, but his
angles, he was cutting nice angles.
I mean, I don't want to compare anyone to greatness like Sugar Ray Leonard because that's a very high standard and typically people don't match it. But he kind of has the Ray Leonard temperament where he can box, but if he feels you're hurt, he wants to get in there and do something. And that can be an elite trait, but it's just I don't know how to judge it yet. And also, by the way, Sam Noakes really good. Like I told people before, he's really good. I heard a lot of people saying he was going to get knocked out. Just because he doesn't fight in America doesn't mean he's not good.
Well, that's definitely true. We are not the only game in town. I would say we are a diminishing game in town. But I think while like what you're saying, right, you got to acknowledge the kid's young. But I do think it's important to see those moments where maybe you could see the emotion in his face, or you could see him stay in the pocket too long, throw 2 punches too many that gives Noakes, you know, the opportunity to counter. You know, I just think like it's easy to criticize, but I think it's important to point it out so that he can work towards it in a sense. Because I think he has that ability. Obviously, I think his nature is to be aggressive, right? So he's going to get hit more than a Shakur, than a Devin, than a Keyshawn. But maybe he can learn how to use that to his advantage more, like Benavidez or Bam, get himself off the line more often, not get into the you go, I go so much,
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. Mighty Brooke Siberian, pro fighter. She's fighting December 13th. Let's set up a chat with you guys. Bunch of rocket ships, champs, a prayer emoji, and a boxing glove. We're gonna get you on. It could be next week or it could be the following week. Let's get you on. Depending, I'll text the management group behind Mighty Brooke and we'll get her on.
Shout out Mighty Brooke, man.
Shout out Mighty Brooke, man. I think we've Haney stays surprising me every time. We get a pro boxer analysis in the chat. So
our favorite kind.
Probably too qualified. So let's go over to your favorite fight. I know you're very excited about this one, Dakota. Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua got announced. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are very minimal, but I got to give respect to the guy that takes a lot of balls to take this fight. He's a much smaller guy. He has a fraction of the experience. It would seem that this will be a quick fight. They'll both make a lot of money. And regardless of how it goes, it kind of benefits Jake and kind of hurts Joshua. But that's all I got, bub.
Is there any scenario this goes bad for Joshua? Like, what are the scenarios it goes bad? Obviously, if he gets dropped, it goes bad. If he loses the fight, it's terrible. But if, like, Jake goes 8 rounds with him, is that bad?
Not necessarily. I think anything short of a completely dominant performance hurts him. I think even Jake having moments hurts him because taking the fight, I think, hurts him. It is to in an athletic sense beneath him. You would think at another time a commission would not just sign off on this. 6'1" cruiserweight taking on maybe the 8th best heavyweight in the world right now. There's things that seem kind of irresponsible to me.
Joshua, on the thing I noticed was, like, everyone can joke and all this, but Joshua's a lot bigger than him. He's a lot bigger than him.
There's so much bigger than him, bro.
A huge size difference. And my only fear is it appears Joshua is not really I wouldn't say not taking him serious, but like he's like looking at him like you don't know what you're getting into. Like he's kind of looking at him.
He doesn't know what he's getting into, I think he's buying his own hype to some extent. Brooke thinks he gets caught early by Jake because Jake is fast enough to be in and out. Listen, you might be right. He did pretty good with Usyk. So I would guess that that's not something that Joshua doesn't know how to handle. But listen,
if he gets caught by Jake, I mean I like Joshua, and I think that Joshua, the competitor, is always an interesting guy. But he is, for as talented as he has had a wild ride. And his hip hip hooray moment is, I'm just hoping we don't get a hip hip hooray for this fight. Yeah,
I don't think we will, and I don't see anything that Jake has actually done in the ring that would lead me to believe that this is going to be competitive. Again, I gotta salute the guy for the balls, because even if he doesn't know what he's getting into, he's seen the footage of him laying Ngannou out. We've all been watching Anthony Joshua knock guys out for a decade, so he knows what the potential is. He's taking the risk. And I do respect that.
AJ intended for a December tune-up fight. That's a bad scenario, says Brooke. Then he chases Jake all fight long, and Jake has the tank to punch and move for 8 rounds. Mankey Crazy said if the tune-up is Jake Paul, it's no different than Joey DeGueco. Brooke says he could, but AJ will get his ass. I'm not sure, but the one thing about this fight I will say is it's interesting, right? You're definitely going to want to see what happens. I mean, for me, I'm kind of curious what the fight looks like. It's like every reasonable thing tells you Joshua is going to go in there, establish a jab, and move this guy back. But the fact that Jake took this fight, it gets me excited because there's a level of intrigue. Jake Paul is doing what a lot of boxers don't do, where he's not taking A-side advantages. He's basically putting himself in a mismatch on a show he's promoting.
And listen, we were just talking about how I love being wrong, and I do. It's the most exciting moments in boxing are often when you're wrong, but it's like I'm pretty confident I know how this one goes. And
Mighty Brook, I'm legit excited for this one because AJ is beatable and Jake can probably pull it off. So Mighty Brook really, really in on Jake Paul pulling off the upset. So that's interesting when fighters. He started 5 years ago, just like me. If you can stay disciplined and committed, growing in the craft, you can become great. So maybe there's a parallel to Mighty Brook and Jake Paul. Okay, I see that. Dakota is thrilled to be talking about this, by the way.
Just listen, bro. It's fine, bro. It's just they didn't make that fight for me, you know. They didn't read that one off my wish list for the year.
Yeah. I guess the next fight we're going to talk about. Do you want to talk about any of the other fights that happened? Let's talk about Francisco Veron. He gets basically a career-defining performance against Roiman Villa for the hardcores. What were your thoughts on that?
A lot, you know, obviously not the same level, but watching him, like, bam, you know, he spent so much of the fight swimming without getting wet, right? But he was right on the end of his jab. He was right at the perfect range for himself. He maintained it the whole fight. Villa had very, very few moments of success, and he's a devastating puncher. He's a tough pressure guy. He can make the ring small, but Veron just boxed a beautiful, composed fight against a legitimate contender, fridge contender, whatever you want to call him. And at 154 pounds, bro, it looks to me like he's just another interesting, challenging guy that you could throw in the mix, you know, of the already whatever 15, 20 interesting guys at that weight. Toss him right in. I'm down to see him with any of those guys, and I don't think it's a gimme.
Ludos just started today's Susem. No, actually, we're just wrapping up. We're gonna do the ProBox card and a little bit of the 360, and then kind of do a quick fight preview of this week, and then maybe some thankfuls. But the good thing is you can go back, you can watch from this point on and go back, or you can check out King Riot versus Haney was already brewing, very suspicious. I don't know what that means. So do you know what that means, Dakota?
I do not. No,
okay,
I do not.
So we have no clue. Hopefully I didn't say something that'll get me in trouble. That would be absolutely amazing if that happened. Francisco Veron, really good fighter. And he's I don't know if he's quite there for a title shot per se, but he's entering the realm of becoming a top guy. You know what I mean? He's becoming a top 10 guy. And they said
I think he's definitely a top 20 guy.
But I think he's becoming a top 10 guy in a good division. And like I think he can be thrown in the mix to fight some really exciting people. So, you know, like let's say a guy like Brandon Adams versus Francisco Veron. Callum Walsh versus
Didn't they already fight?
They did actually in the OTX tournament. So
yeah.
But I mean, that was a good fight. So, you know, I wouldn't.
You got to draw with Jahai Tucker. He's, you know, he's been in with some top guys and has some experience that's clearly built him into something. He's learned from a variety of different experiences in his young career, and he's become a very versatile, difficult to get out of his comfort zone guy.
My next question to you, Dakota, is what did you think of Dante Benjamin and Francois Scarborough Jr. on this undercard? What were your impressions on both of these fighters?
You know, listen, I think Dante is a talented guy, right? There's the obvious things. It looks like he hits hard. He's got good hand speed. It was just a little flat for me. And I know he had a tough guy in there with him who was crafty, but they both just didn't quite show an intensity level. And I like a good technical fight. I like a thinking man's fight, but it just felt like they were both kind of waiting a little too much. And it wasn't a great performance, but it wasn't a bad performance either.
It felt a little too much like sparring. And I think that's what happens when both guys respect each other a lot and there's a lot on the line, is a lot of guys start to become counter punchers to land their money punch. And what happens is not a lot happens.
And listen, there was moments of this fight. I thought that Powell, honestly, I remember feeling like not scoring it, but maybe Powell had edged it. And so
I
there
felt
was
it
that.
was a draw. I felt like the fight was a
Yeah.
draw.
Yeah, and it kind of seemed like that's how they were going to read it out. I'm looking at the scores now, and there was 2 5-3s. There was 1 7-1. 7-1 don't make any fucking sense. I can live with that 5-3. But it wasn't a performance where I felt like I knew what kind of fighter he was. It was a lack of identity.
Well, it felt like this was the level for both guys. Like they didn't separate. It felt like this is the tier. Whereas Veron separated. What did you think of Scarborough?
I liked him as well. Obviously, that was a quicker performance, if I'm remembering correctly.
A little
I
bit of
think
a weird stoppage.
weird stoppage. I haven't been like totally blown away by him the couple of times that I've seen him, but clearly he knows how to win, right? Like he has been in with some quality guys, and that's part of why he hasn't always looked great. And clearly, I think he's also getting better. So that's always a good sign as well.
Okay. I will do a very, very quick 360 promotions rundown. It's their last card of the year, and Mizuki Hiruta got her 6th title defense, and I'd say this is her best performance that she's had. She fought a girl named Gloria Gallardo, and she beat her up pretty bad, busted her nose. It was a bloody fight. But for me, Hirota in January kind of underachieved for me. I remember wanting to see her fight a little bit more action-packed and exciting. And then as we got into this bout, I really felt like she did a great job. So I'm very happy and pleased with this performance from her. And I think, she fought 4 times. There's a case that when we do our awards in a few weeks about the best fighters of the year, when it comes down to women's boxers, she's in the conversation. I think what hurts her is she's on UFC Fight Pass. And for someone like you don't pick up the UFC Fight Pass every single fight to watch these bouts, but I think she's a very good fighter. Also, Guadalupe Medina, she fought someone that I've known forever, Tatiana Alvarez, Tati, and she stopped her in 2 rounds. She knocked her down and then flurried and got the stoppage on the ropes. That they had fought earlier in Alvarez's career, in Medina's career. They had an earlier match. It was a majority decision fight. It was a very close fight. I thought that was impressive for Medina to fight a former opponent who gave you a hard fight and separate like that. Adon Palma was another standout. He got a 2nd round knockout. The opponent was Judy Flores. Flores has been in with guys like Michael Angeletti. Good opponents, 2nd round knockout. Good puncher, goes to the body. I'm not sure I know how far he can go, but I know he's going to press the action. I know he's looking to land big shots, etc. And I'd say also another notable standout was right hook Roxy, Ayana Verduzco. She has the potential to be a superstar. She's like the total package. She can box. She has the social media thing. She kind of reminds me of a women's boxing version of Ryan Garcia. And she fought Maria Salinas. And to me, it was just kind of a good veteran young fighter performance where she got her rounds. She showed a diversity of offense where she was able to go forward and go backwards. And I just thought it was a complete performance. So I was very into that. And then to answer Jesus M, Lukey, are you going to be at the Diego Pacheco Kevin Sadajo fight? I will be. And if you're going to that fight, please let me know. And maybe if there's people in the chat, I will take you to lunch. If you guys can meet up, we'll do the Lukey boxing meetup, and we'll go get lunch before the show. So if you're going, let me know. The only asterisk I have to say is I go for the very first fight on the card. So if you want to do the Lukey meetup, you have to meet me because I'm going to be in there for the very first bell. I'm one of those sickos. I'm a degenerate where I get to the fights and I watch the very first fight of the night. And I also think there's people that care about that stuff, right, Dakota? There's family members that want the results. So that was my 360 promotions roundup results.
Great job, pal.
Now we go to this week. Ben Whittaker, 2020 Olympian, silver medalist, light heavyweight. He takes on, well, I don't even know who he takes on. He's fighting in his Matchroom debut. He was originally with Boxer. What are your thoughts on Whittaker's headline fight and debut with Matchroom?
I got to be honest with you, Lukey. I have no idea what to make of this kid. I saw the one fight that was like a no contest where he got hurt during it. I wasn't overly impressed with him during that. And yet, for whatever reason, I do seem to see him in a lot of headlines. I see him on a lot of thumbnails on YouTube. And while I've watched some highlights and I've seen him the one fight, I'm not sure what makes people so hot or cold on him one way or the other. Seems like a decent young fighter, though, to me.
He was a great amateur, and he's kind of got like a flashy personality. And in the amateurs, I think he did like rap songs and stuff. And people were always like, how is this guy going to transition as a pro? Will the British audience, because I think that someone said it in my blog, and it kind of makes sense that the British fight fans sometimes romanticize blue collar working class guys who like Sam Noakes, who are like, oh, I'm just a carpenter. Ricky Hatton. And I think that people are interested to see how British fans take to Ben Whittaker, because he's kind of the anti version of like a blue collar man's man. Even Derek Chisora has some of that, right? Where and
he doesn't have the benefit of that, Chris Eubank Jr. or Conor Benn have of having pre-established beloved fathers where they can act however they want and say whatever they want, put whatever substances they want in their body, and there's no.
But here's the thing about him is he can really fight. He was a silver medal Olympian. He was the best guy in that Olympic class. I think him, Pat McCormick. And he was really looking to be a star. And then he had those fights with Liam Cameron, and he hasn't fought. And this is his return. Mankey Crazy, who I trust his opinion, says easy step down fight. 19-year-old Cuban, 6'7". I'm not sure. Jesus M, clarify that one for me. But I'm expecting him to look pretty sensational in this fight. But it's a Thanksgiving weekend card. You can't expect too much. And I think Ben Whittaker is going to come out and just, blitz the guy and hurt him.
I'm going to have to check him out. Definitely actually get, the scouting report.
And then on this undercard, just to keep you on even longer, because we got to rush through these last couple of things real quick. Former UFC fighter Molly McCann will be taking on Ebony Cotton, who's 1-0. The thing I know about McCann is in her first fight, and her opponent that's 1-0, the only fighter she's ever fought in was 0-17-1 in her pro debut back in June, just for context on that 1-0 record. That's going to be happening. McCann is a former UFC fighter who was kind of billed as a star, and it just didn't work out. Zelfa Barrett, our guy, will be fighting on the undercard. Aaron Bowen is a guy that I think a lot of people really believe could be a top middleweight, and probably the show stealer of the card is Cameron Vong versus Gavin Gwynn, the rematch. It's a good fight. I'd be pretty surprised if Vong won this. I feel like Gavin Gwynn kind of has his number, and I think that when we saw Bilal Fawaz defeat Junaid Boston, this is probably going to have a similar result. What are your thoughts on this, Dakota?
My instincts on that rematch kind of tell me the same thing too, but there's something about Cameron Vong that when I first saw him, I thought there was something special about him, and it hasn't translated necessarily in his performances, but he's taken tough fights, and winning a rematch like this in spectacular fashion would be one of those things that you would do to kind of elevate to the next level. So I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on that one.
It's a good fight. Like, if nothing else, this is a really good fight.
Yep.
So then we got the fight that I'm going to be in the building for. So if you really want to meet me or say hello to me, it's a really good card. And if you can't be there, you can watch it on YouTube on ProBox TV. It is the ProBox TV card. It is a deep, deep card. We've got 4 10-round bouts. So I'm not sure what the main event is, but it quite possibly could be a lightweight bout between Justin Paleto versus Nike Theran, which is a battle of basically good record fighters. Paleto is a fighter from Texas who's pretty established. Also, you have a junior flyweight bout with Eric Bedillo taking on Elwin Soto, a former champion who lost his belt in Fresno. Here's a fight that I like. Adelaida Ruiz taking on Alexis Kabicki. Kabicki just lost to Gabriela Fendora. The Cobra Ruiz is really trying to step up and get herself into title contention. So she's going to be fighting on this card. Carlos Balderos, the 2016 U.S. Olympian, will taking on Ricardo I can't even say his name. My guy, Charlie Sheehy, maybe we'll get him on the podcast soon, taking on D'Angelo Keys. Big ticket seller in Fresno, Jordan Fuentes. Jorge Maravillo taking on the experienced veteran Cameron Creel, who's pulled off a few upsets in his time.
Shout out Cameron Creel, man. Real
veteran of the game. Jose Contreras is making his pro debut, Dakota. And get this about Jose Contreras. He was in the gym learning to box when I started reporting on boxing. And now he's turning pro. Let's see what his age is. But
coming of age moment.
Well, and that's also Lukey's getting old.
Yeah.
Right. When you start out doing something and someone's like a little tiny kid and now they're able to turn professional and you're like, wait, he's pro? Wait, he's doesn't look like what he looked like when he was a baby. So he's also going to be on this card. My guys, the Teratanian brothers, Nikolai and Sebastian, both really, really good fighters. They're on this card. Ellie Salinas is supposed to be a really good junior bantamweight. Kevin Godino, who I believe is also promoted or managed by Arnold Barbosa, is someone that I watched who got a pretty good win. And so, I mean, it's a card that has a lot of depth to it. And I'm pretty excited to see this card. And yeah, so, I mean, I'm pretty excited for this Pro Box card. Where are the best seats in the Stockton Arena? Jesus M, I'm not exactly sure. What I would say for the best seats for a value is I'd say you'd want to be somewhere in the middle and elevated slightly. So because the floor is hit or miss, because if you get behind a basketball player, you're in trouble. So I'd say like if you can get any mid-level tickets in the middle area where you can see the ring, that would be a great thing. Also, they said Cameron Vong is now with Ben Davison, so that might speak to what you're saying. Any thoughts on this Pro Box card that I want to hear about?
I'm actually curious to know what you're looking to see from Charlie, because he was a part of that class of really talented guys during the COVID bubble, you know, that we were watching every weekend. And I felt like we all got to watch the early part of his career, and then in the last 2 or 3 years, we haven't seen him. And so I'm sure I can't be the only person who's wondering how his progress has been, what you're looking to see from him, and why we haven't seen him.
Well, I mean, for him, and obviously I'm close with him, right? Anybody that knows anything knows I'm pretty close with Charlie. I view myself as like an uncle or a big brother to him. I mean, shoot, I even went to Florida with him one time, and anybody that knows me knows I hate leaving my house. So if I leave my house, that's a big deal. So what I'm expecting for him is to, first off, show separation from his opponent. I'd like him to look the part of someone that could be in a 50-50 fight against an unbeaten guy or a one-loss fighter, what I'd call a showbox type fight, that he'd be a suitable guy that could be in a co-feature or a main event of those type of fights. I'd like to see him use his speed and let his punches go. And I'd like the takeaway to be, wow, look at how accurate he is. Look at how he's flowing. Because to me, when Charlie fights his best, he fights like an orthodox Arislandi Lara. And that's kind of his thing. And that's what made him successful. So what I'd like to see him is he's becoming a veteran. He's going to try to get active, I believe, this next coming year. And I really am hoping that he can go out there and he's been in camp since July. So he's had a long camp. And I just hope that he can go out there and just kind of, every fight has pressure and anxiety, but I hope that he can just kind of perform, kind of have a performance where he's not stressing or emphasizing things too much. Let's see. Hey, Sue Sam. Okay, I got to read the other things. Was that, while I go through these comments, why don't you give me your feedback on what I want to see?
Well, I guess the other thing I would love to know is why exactly it is that we haven't seen him. And I guess, what do you think that, obviously he's talented. I think anybody who's seen him knows that he's talented, but what do you think have been the things that are missing or that need to be improved on for him to kind of keep up with that class of guys that he was coming up with?
Well, I don't know why he hasn't been active at all, but I think that the big thing, right, is if he can just get some fights in, I think in boxing activity is key. So if you can stay active and you can really feel like I think the big thing for him to stay up with that class that he was a part of is to feel like every fight leads to something, to not feel like, okay, I fight and then I'm waiting and waiting, but when is something going to happen? Because I feel like fighters, not to say this happens to him, but there's like a emotional ebb and flow where you're like, okay, and then you have to figure out when to taper your trainings or how to stay focused, right? Because you don't have an end goal, you don't have a fight, but you know that the call could come any day. So I think for him, it's to maybe get to a point where you have a performance where the fans are like, who is this guy? I want to see him again. Because I think sometimes that's hurt him lately, is he's not had these performances that, the fans go, why isn't he on television? So I think he needs to do that. And if that can snowball into getting more fights next year, just getting more active will help him be able to be competitive in those top fights.
Yeah, and being seen. I think being seen, but all those top ranked guys are kind of having that problem right now, but being seen.
So is Joe Sean James on that ProBox card? No, Joe Sean James is on the December 19th card. And maybe we'll get Joe Sean James on the show.
We can definitely do that.
We will get Joe Sean. Maybe, I don't know. We'll get him soon. What weight is Charlie fighting at? Give or take lightweight? I'm not sure. Lukey, you going to the interview at the fights or just spectator? I'm going as media. I'm a loser. Feels like the George Acosta, Charlie Sheehy, Mark Castro class are passed over for the next younger group. It could be right now, but the thing is, in boxing, that only works if you give up. So if Charlie keeps grinding and he keeps getting better, boxing's great in the sense that the results are the results. So if you stay mentally strong, you stay in shape. What did Hagler say? You starve the doubt. What did he say? You starve the doubt, and what did you feed? Feed the whatever. It's like if you can put these performances together, the politics of boxing actually don't matter.
It's such a what have you done for me lately game. You know what I mean?
And then I wanted to end the show right now on a really sad note that I don't think that you know about. Do you know about this?
I don't know.
Someone that I once met passed away today. Vanez Martirosyan sadly passed away today. And it was very tragic and sudden. And I wanted to share a memory of Vanez because I have a memory, but a great memory was in probably 2018. Vanez stepped in to fight Triple G in Los Angeles at the StubHub Center. And I remember being at a place, Snack, where the phone call came and he took the fight. And I remember seeing him come to train and he wasn't in shape, but he had the balls. Right? So this is all these guys in their prime never wanted to fight Golovkin. And here's Vanez, and I remember he was not fully there. He was there mentally, but he wasn't in the shape that you'd expect someone to be for that level. And I remember just Vanez and his enthusiasm for life and wanting to will it into existence, right? Like, here's this opportunity. The guy had fought Lara tough. He felt as though he couldn't get an opportunity. Gets a fight against Triple G. He's a great Olympian, and he really wanted to will a fight and make something happen. And I just remembered that training camp. I remember we used to go to this beach, and he came down, and I remember like him being like the ringleader, like he was like taking ownership of being like, come on guys, let's get this jog going. And he was really a genuinely nice person. And he had this ability to really fight. And I think it's really tragic news. So I think that was probably incoherent, my stream of consciousness, but R.I.P. to Vanez Martirosyan. Really, really sad and shocking news that he passes away. I think that he's one of these fighters that probably should have won a world title that never did.
Took a lot of tough fights and got out young too, got out before he took too much punishment or, yeah, that's terrible. That's horrible. I was a big fan of his. Also the great fight, the fight with Boo Boo too, close fight.
Yeah, he had a close fight with Boo Boo, and it was just, I think that for me being around him for a week, it was him, and he had Ronda Rousey's coach at Armin. Was it Armin or Edmund? And he was a really nice guy too. There was actually a funny story. We went to eat at this place, this breakfast spot, and I always annoy my friend because I tear it. And we're sitting there and talking and stuff, and he stops and he just looks at me and he's like, "You're a good man," and he like pointed at me. And then I'm like, okay, thank you. And then just went back to whatever he was doing. It was like super awkward, but it really made me feel good. I was like, oh shit, that was nice, man. Because normally at that point I was used to like hostile. I wouldn't say hostile, but like you go in and it's like your dream to be around high level fighters. And then everyone's initial interaction with you is like, you're the worst person ever, you're gonna spy on us, you're gonna have all this footage, and all you're gonna do is like malicious stuff, and you're just gonna be a terrible human being, and we're gonna be distrustful and mean to you. And then the tone of that team was, you're a good guy, man. And I was like, okay, cool. I like this team, like, but I think that's the nature of video cameras, right? As I look at it, is video is so permanent that if you're not completely secure in what you're doing, it's going to bring out any flaws or insecurities you have, any doubts, any fears, even this medium, right? Saying an opinion. If you have any insecurity, the platform of video is going to intimidate people. And then you being the person that controls that's going to create a conflict with people. The time I didn't really understand that. Now I get it, but it's like, I just remember I used to have all these awkward interactions, and then Vanez and his team was just basically like, sparring, yeah, film it. Hit the bag, film it. Interview me, sure. Do you want to do it in my car? Where do you want it? Like, it was like no issue whatsoever. It would be like certain guys you have to ask. It's like him and Mikey Garcia were like the first ballot Hall of Fame guys to film. There was no issue ever with anything. So that's my memory of Vanez.
R.I.P. to Vanez, man, and those kinds of fighter experiences and fighter interactions when you're early on doing what we're doing, it's so crucial to have a couple of those, Have you ever gotten that experience of like being the camera guy where like people are immediately distrustful of you? I haven't. And that's probably due to a volume issue, right? How often that's happening. But a lot of times when I had the camera, it was at media events. And then when the camera would come out, it was because I was filming a specific fighter. And so the fight, I wouldn't necessarily fight in the gym. So, now, or if it was Shadej or whoever, they'd say it's with me today. And there was no, but I also know context that first is what gets clicks, and so that situation
Well, that is basically our show. Jesus M. I will be at the ProBox show in Fresno on Saturday. If you are going, please let me know. And I would love to meet you. There's a great food spot across from it. I forget it's a tri-tip sandwich place. If you really want, I'm a food guy. There's a kiosk a little down from the Save Mart Center that has Texas toast with a tri-tip. And that one I just love. So I actually prefer that one because that's like a little secret one where it's next to a supermarket. The one across from the arena, all the college kids go to, and it fills up and it's loud. I go to the kiosk one, and a lot of people go, "Oh, I don't like it as much. I have to eat out of my car." But I mean, I'm in and out of there in 5-10 minutes. And if I go to the other one, it's at least
right up your alley, bub.
Oh, yeah. And the other one across the street is about 40 minutes, 35 minutes. They do the whole call the order over the thing, and there's all this beer and music. Oh, it's not my deal, bro. And parking's bad. Always never a big fan of a bad parking lot, bro. So if you go out, Jesus M, please let me know. Leave a comment or something. And that's it. Big show. Probably next week won't be as big. Maybe we'll get Mighty Brook on. That'll be the goal. Maybe we'll have the guest, Mighty Brook. And Dakota, what can we expect from you this week?
You can always catch me on the Lukey Boxing Show. You can always catch me on ITR Boxing. Check out my written recaps of the fights this weekend. They're short and sweet, but if you didn't get to see the fights, I think they'll catch you up real quick along with our show. Go watch the Fight Live with Mio Yoshida. Got some other docs that I'm working on filming soon, but as always, appreciate you guys in the chat, man. The third host. And shout out Mighty Brook.
Thank you, guys. Okay, talk to you next week.